Good morning again from Vowellhala. Definitely my happy place. I'm Ryan, here watching Vowell Ventures, and I finished up another trip worth of projects. So I figured it was time for a tour. A reason for what we're doing. The trail you see behind me is the entrance into this place that I found a bit over 11 years ago. I studied it for a while, hemmed and hawed, back and forth. On my birthday, I finally decided, what the heck, I'll make an offer. As always, with any property, the offer was rejected, but not with a laugh. So I decided to counter, come back up, walk the property, study more, and then went for it. Made an offer after a little bit of, made another offer after a little bit of back and forth. We came to an agreement. Long story short, the property is ours. So, the only thing I can think of is giving you a proper tour. We've been officially building for about 9.5 years now. It is 100% off-grid. I'm very proud of that. But we are not in such a position where when it's done, we'll be making a ton of sacrifices. I'm trying to basically build an extremely large solar system with all the creature comforts that we would have in a normal suburban home. And more importantly for me, a very large shop where I can fabricate, repair, design, think, tinker, putter, just play to my heart's content. So without further ado, let's start the tour. I know it may seem strange to some. Heck, it seems strange to me to start a tour of a 10-year build with a stump. Yep, that is a stump. That stump marks the very first tree that got cut down on this property and was the start of this trail. This trail is a spur coming off the main trail that bisected it. A very good friend of mine and his son 10 years ago, 9.5 years ago, and I came in here with nothing but four-wheelers and chainsaws and an idea. We started cutting, knocking down anything in the road without getting too carried away because we didn't want to make it a road. And I didn't want anything straight. I wanted to keep a broken line of sight. So we just went for it. Enjoy the hike. We're coming out into the main clearing where my original idea was to put a 60 by 40 shop and then expand out from there. And with everything else I do, my ideas changed. So this main clearing ended up being a staging ground where everything comes in. I store stuff I don't know what to do with. Those are the mold boards I made for, or form boards I made for the footing blocks for the main shop. This is our commemorative tree. Wow, it grew. I have to back up. This is our commemorative tree. I planted this, I believe, a year or two after actually purchasing the property. It's a Kaibab blue spruce. It was roughly 3 feet tall when it went in the ground. So that was 6-7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago. I'm losing count. And it's the special thing about it is that when it went in the ground, it was exactly the same height as my son. So it is now taller than I am. My son is not. This was the impromptu swimming pool we made when we came up here. When we left where we live, it was 93 degrees. When we landed here in Wasilla, in Anchorage, drove to our property, that evening it was 96. So I figured, what better time to test our backhoe, and dug a hole, threw visqueen in it, and made a redneck swimming pool. It worked great. One minor detail. Our groundwater is about 40 degrees, which I admit in 96 degree weather, it was very refreshing, but it also turns blue pretty quick. There's our well. That shed was the original structure. Actually, it wasn't. That was the second structure on this shop, on this property, after the all-important outhouse. with a wife and 2 kids, one being a daughter, it was very important to have an outhouse. You can't have a big piece of land without a dead vehicle, so there's a dead vehicle. That's just how we roll. That's a friend of mine's. I might, or we might, turn it into a fun toy someday. But there's the well. I picked a general area, handed my kids a spray can of paint, told them draw an X. They figured it out. We punched the well. We ended up with just about 30 gallon a minute refresh rate and some of the cleanest, best tasting water I have ever experienced in my life. Had it tested, absolutely good to go. What you see in front of you is the heart of the entire property. It will be the heart of the entire property. That's my shop. What I refer to as my cabin in the woods. A lot of people don't understand necessarily the scale of what I'm doing, so I'm hoping this helps. And it's also why it's taken so long. This is a 60 foot by 120 foot commercial grade steel building. Heavy iron frame, siding, the works. The intent is the back third of it will be our house. The forward 2/3 of it are basically my shop. Once we're able to move up here and get comfortable and settled a bit, my hope is to extend it out this way 60 feet. I know, that's a lot, but there's a reason for it. With the winds coming from the east and northeast, and winters being able to get down to 30 below or maybe even colder, I want an airlock. I want an Arctic entry over this front end so that the main shop will be heated, radiant floor heating in the ground or in the concrete slab. The extended area will basically be my quote-unquote garage, where I can keep my dirty old greasy, call it revived equipment, safe from the weather, or have a place to work on it. I will have the radiators for the generator, backup generator, and anything else in there that produces waste heat, dumping heat into that Arctic entry, so it has some form of heat, just not official. The part that may have more people's jaws dropping, wow, I'm tripping over my tongue. The part that might have most people's jaws dropping is this solar system. There's actually 3 arrays up there, technically 4. The bottom 3 panels are dedicated to the travel trailer inside. The rest of them, 63 panels, are 315 watts each, 19,845 watts, or 19.8 kilowatt, if I did my math right. That is feeding the building right now. That is more than enough currently to pretty much never run a generator for anything I need to do, unless we've had apocalyptic dark skies for way too long, which is definitely possible. That solar field is why for the last 3 or 4 trips up here, I cut essentially a 2.5 acre, wow, that's pretty, squirrel. Anyway, a 2.5 acre pie-shaped south lawn. I did it in such a fashion so that I could catch a 2-hour window during the winter solstice when the sun is only 5 degrees above the horizon. The theory is that eventually I will be able to make a minimum of 24 hours of power consumption in a 2-hour period. Long and short means that when it's sunny and it's full charging, do not touch the shiny copper parts on the 3/0 cable because, well, it'll leave a mark. The last trip up here, besides getting a little bit of cutting done, here's the logs from up on the road, previous video. Last trip, the most important infrastructure, which pretty much completes all of the primary infrastructure, was getting the septic system in. There's a 1,500 gallon concrete fuel tank. I have insulated it with 3 inches of extruded polystyrene, also known as pink board, because it will not absorb moisture. The reason I insulated it is, once again, our ground is 38 to 40 degrees. The bottom of that tank is about 9 or 10 feet underground. with 3-inch of insulation on the sides, 6 inches on top, cement board on top of that. My drain line from the building is buried roughly 4 feet underground. I have 3 inches of insulation on top of that with more cement board up to about 4 feet from the building. At 4 feet from the building, you can see some of the foam. Instead of insulating under the slab, I am insulating this way. I'm making an umbrella. That allows me to basically trap what actual heat is coming out of the ground within the confines of the building to help heat the building. It's also a Scandinavian method of, that's actually where I learned about it. It's a Scandinavian method of shallow footing frost protection so that we don't have to go crazy deep. I'm not worried about having frost heaves and anything else breaking my foundations. Once I get inside, I'll show you more about how the foundation and the footings are built so far. But for now, that's the leach field in the back. That's the septic tank up in front. The conduit is for a temperature sensor that goes down and is sandwiched between the insulation and the concrete of the tank so that I can monitor the temperature and, if needed, turn on a glycol loop that I have down inside the tank to warm it up. Because anaerobic bacteria does not survive, is not active below 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So if I can keep it above 50 degrees Fahrenheit, it'll be happy. It'll do its job. You won't get all the buildup. You won't have to pump the tank as often. The other thing I'm going to do is I found a source for an affordable setup to be able to convert the tank over to aerobic bacteria by introducing air and great big bristle, or basically they look like the booms. They look like a big fuzzy brush. By converting to aerobic bacteria instead of anaerobic bacteria during the summer when I make lots of electricity, it'll help break down the fats, oils, greases, and pretty much get it down to where just about never have to pump the tank. And anytime you pump a tank, you're paying someone cash. Anytime you're paying someone cash, you're not using that money for something that can benefit the property or buy food or pay for some fuel as needed. Anyway, enough about a septic tank. Let's make the magic happen. I went big on the door primarily because I have now acquired some heavy equipment machinery, have every intention of acquiring more, and I want to be able to bring stuff inside the warehouse, be it somebody's truck, somebody's tall trailer, boats, you name it. Coming off the solar panels, those 3 disconnects, those 3 boxes are the individual circuits of the arrays. I have 3 breakers in each one. Each string is on its own breaker. They are combined in those, run up and across the building over to the other side to the Sol-Ark 12K outdoor hybrid inverters. This is what I refer to as my south electrical panel. It's just exactly that. There is my home away from home, and it is now officially able to remain full-time set up inside the trailer, inside the shop. No breakdown necessary, which makes everything so much nicer. Here's the brain center of everything. Those are the 2 Sol-Ark 12K hybrid inverters. They are both charge controllers, power inverters, and they're capable of AC coupling. So later on, I can tie in N-phase microinverters to them, and these will be able to operate them. Essentially, what I'm going to end up doing is building a microgrid. I will never stop expanding the solar system out here. Every time I build a structure, I will figure out a way to get more panels on it. I'm already planning, besides the extension to the building, I'm hoping to be able to build a pole barn outside that will be basically 5 feet taller than this building is, and it'll be behind it to the north. So that during the winter at 5 degrees above the horizon, the sun will come over the roof of this building and still be able to hit the solar panels on the pole barn. But over time, the more power I can build, the less dependent on consumable fuel I am that has to be purchased. That's the primary goal. It's a cloudy day right now, but if I come up here and I poke the screen, you can see that on one inverter, oh, I guess we got some sun. We're actually producing just about 14,000 kW, excuse me, 14,000 watts right now. We're charging the batteries off one inverter at 8.7. The other one is putting 4 in, so we have about 12 kW worth of power going into the batteries. The batteries are up here in this wonderful pink box that, you know, duct tape holds everything together. That is an insulated box over the the Discover AES lithium iron phosphate batteries. There are 4 of them in there. Ultimately, they will be about a third of what I'll end up with. The batteries are up high. They're about 190 pounds a piece, but they're up high because if I'm moving stuff around in here, I don't want to risk hitting them and causing any damage. Same thing with the Sol-Arks. I'm 6 foot tall, so I wanted them up where I can see them. This device is brand new, just released a few months ago. This is the Discover Link 2. That allows accurate state of charge and communication directly between the Sol-Arks and the batteries. The batteries have their own battery management system in them for temperature monitoring and everything. So they just give the Sol-Ark all the information it needs, what voltage, what amperage, what the temperature is, any alerts, anything else, state of health, state of charge. And the Sol-Arks are able to just sit there and say, no problem, here it is. Well, I'm sure you wanted to see a waistline, but that's the tank drain from the trailer over to the clean out inside the building, which will eventually be at finished floor level. These are the footings. The footings are 30-inch square by 4 foot deep, tied together by 12-inch by 22-inch tie beams, rebar reinforced. Those are the glycol lines. That's a 100-foot loop going out to the tank with roughly 55 feet inside the tank, that if I need to, I can turn them on, warm the slurry up, warm the tank up, make all the bacteria happy. The one next to it is for the sensor cable to come back to my building management system. It was about 4.5 years ago. My father joined my wife and 2 kids and I to stand this frame up. We rented a great all. My friend came down, and in 4 days, we stood the entire frame up with 1 great all, a rented scissor lift, some big, heavy tie-down ratchet straps in the middle of the forest. The first 3 days, we didn't even have the construction drawings to show exactly how to do everything. So we made it up as we went. A month and a half later, I came back up with a coworker and friend of mine and discovered we put the purlins for the roof on the walls thinking they were girts. A day and a half later, we had them all swapped around and everything right, laughed about it, no harm done, just a little bit of a loss of time. But as you can see, it is a very large, open, clear span steel warehouse. So enough of the technical mumbo jumbo already. Pretty much it's big warehouse, making a whole lot of power. It's taking a long time because I'm doing it all myself and with friends and out of pocket. My pockets aren't very deep, so it all adds up. I am getting closer, 1 step at a time, all that kind of good stuff. But let's go look at a few other things. So in a forest surrounded by birch, quaking aspen, and white spruce, possibly black spruce. I don't think so. I think we're dry enough here that we don't have a lot of white spruce in this particular area. Out by the creek there are. You get green, brown, and a lot of gold. And while it's really, really pretty in the fall, I wanted some red. So this is a baby mountain ash. I believe it's a baby mountain ash. And of course the tag fell off. And it's not being punished. It hasn't stolen anything. It hasn't been a brat and I put it in timeout. This cage is an Alaskan version of a deer fence or a deer cage. Our deer, as I'm sure you've seen elsewhere, and if you haven't, that's okay. Our deer are moose. And when a moose's shoulder is about 6 to 6.5 feet off the ground, their head is closer to 7 to 8. So that is a piece of concrete screen, 20 foot by 8 foot, rolled into a circle, flipped up on its side and driven into the ground, and then reinforced with rebar as stakes to hold it to the ground, because otherwise moose are the most indiscriminate hedge trimmers, wood chippers, foliage shredders you have ever seen. And I don't care how deer proof or deer resistant a tree says it is, it will not be moose proof. This one actually got mowed down probably a foot before I even managed to get the screens on it. And I have a couple more to show you. We'll go for a quick walk down the driveway and I'll show you some more. We're about 80 feet below the entrance to this place. It's up on a bluff. So a lot of the really high winds go ripping right over the top. But it is still fun to watch the trees start swaying. It isn't as much fun when every year we get an average of at least a half dozen knockdowns. But, you know, you just make light of it. They knock trees down, the wind knocks trees down, trees fall down for whatever reason. That's just an excuse to play with chainsaws. And that's why everybody should always have more than one chainsaw. I happen to own 9. Nothing out of the ordinary about that at all. Not at all. Anyway, we still have a ways to walk. Quick stop. We're not where I wanted to go yet, but this area is where the material for the building pad and the road surfacing came out of. When we dug down and first did a test hole, we discovered that no matter how deep we got, even using an excavator with a longer boom, we never ran into sand and gravel that had silt in it. You could literally grab handfuls of sand, just pure gray, I'm assuming ground up granite, ground up rock sand, and you were left with not a speck of dust on your hands. It was the most amazing thing. I was shocked by it. Right now it's full of water because they've had 2 to 3 months of rain up here. Water table's a little higher than normal. But this area, starting about, where's my finger? Starting from about here, cutting back in probably another 100, 150 feet, coming back towards the clearing, getting down to the clearing, and then coming back to follow this line straight through. That's all going to get dug out and excavated and turned into a pond or a fire reservoir, so that if there's an emergency, I have a big source of water that I can throw a big pump in and start spraying down the buildings or anything else I need to. And more importantly, we have our own swimming hole when it gets hot. I will have circulation in it, solar powered circulation, that it'll keep the water moving when it's warm out and sunny out and keep the water level up. And it'll be big enough that we could float a boat and do a full engine and cooling system test before we decide to tow down to Whittier or Seward for a launch, and not get down there and be surprised that there's an issue. Earmuffs on an outdrive just don't answer all the questions. But here we are. This is where I wanted to bring you. These are a couple more trees I planted because I wanted more color in here. The problem is I have forgotten what these trees were. Well, I know what the trees are. I just don't remember which order they're in. This one, I am surprised. I did not realize it was going to be this red, and that's amazing. So this is either a white lilac or a choke cherry. If anybody out there knows which one it is, please leave me a comment and let me know. Because whatever it is, I want more. These, yeah, sorry about the wiggles there. Whoops, that's a finger. These, or this bush, is not a blueberry. It's a cousin. Tastes very similar, but it's a honeyberry. And I've found those bushes elsewhere on the property, and they're wonderful. They're absolutely just delightful to eat. So I can't wait to find more. I think we came up with 5 or 6 variety of berries on the property that are just growing wild that we can pick plenty of. This little guy, this is why I had to put all the trees in timeout. The moose really liked this one and did way too much damage to it before I could get the cage on. I thought it was going to survive. It was looking decent at later spring, and then having a long dry spell followed by a drowning. I get the distinct impression it did not survive. So again, this one was either the white lilac or the choke cherry. So whichever one you tell me that other tree was answers my question about this one, and I can get a replacement. So please, please, please throw a comment in there. Let me know what that absolutely beautiful tree is, because even this one got mowed down pretty hard. But as you can see, it survived. Thank goodness. But what I was really hoping for was to make a pattern of these trees, because when I saw them when I bought them, I thought they were spectacular. They're ornamental, colorful. So I wanted to make a row all the way down the length. So shave the natural trees back a bit and then plant these all the way down, so we had a really nice colorful drive. Here we are at the corner of the property. This is the official corner of this lot, and right down there below the flags is my corner stake, corner monument, pounded into the ground somewhere in there-ish. That's why those are there. So our property line goes from here straight west, straight north, quarter mile in both directions. It ends up being a 40-acre parcel. This is a public right-of-way easement, a quarter mile long, and it ends right, oop, that's a finger, right up on that side at the corner. So that's a quarter mile up the 2 hills to the bottom of that dirt pile up there. Right. Oh, that's a lot harder than it looks. Anyway, right up there to the right side of that corner. From there, it doglegs left. I ended up buying that piece of property up there as well. It's just a little over an acre, acre and a quarter, acre and a half, something like that. And that's what I refer to as the gate lot. More than likely, because of distances involved and sense of humor, I'll probably put an outhouse up there too, because once you get to that lot, it's still a fairly long drive in. In the Bobcat, it took 6 to 8 minutes to make the run one way. Might even put a guest cabin or a guest house up there, or bigger guest house, and kick one of my kids out when they're 18 and say, welcome to your own house. Get out of ours. All kids should be moving out at 18. This friend of mine and I built probably 8 years ago. We dropped some 30-foot spruce, bucked up a bunch of logs, cribbed it, ran them in with spikes, and this served as a way to safely get the four-wheeler onto the bluff from the trail that came down here. We'd carved a trail in here first for a couple years before actually making the road. I had plans on yanking this out and dragging it out towards the creek and, you know, turn it into a bridge. But unfortunately, it got in an argument with a neighbor's front end loader. Big one. I want to say it's a 966, but I could be wrong. Something that size though, give or take. And, well, not very many things win arguments against big Caterpillar or John Deere front end loaders. I don't remember which brand it is, and I feel ashamed of it. It's yellow, but it could still be a John Deere. But the biggest attraction to this place is views like that. When the winds are running and the sun is fighting the clouds, you get some of the most spectacular skyscapes, I guess you could call them. Cloudscapes? I don't know. It's just gorgeous down here. It's quiet and it's peaceful. Spruce hen run around. Red squirrels everywhere, even though they can be just argumentative. The moose are nice to talk to. And yesterday, for the first time, saw an ermine in here. And that probably explains why I haven't seen very many squirrels this trip. We've seen red fox in here. I've seen cross fox in here. We've seen Arctic hare in here. At least I assume it's an Arctic hare. Some kind of rabbit. Some kind of hare. I thought I saw wolf tracks in here, but they didn't look right. Later on, I discovered why. It wasn't a wolf. It was a St. Bernard. Turns out a couple miles away, there's a neighbor with a few St. Bernards that they let run roam. They let run free on occasion. A neighbor did see a black bear run down the head of my driveway a few years ago and called me and told me about it. And when I got in the following week, you could see the tracks in the hard pack from it. That was pretty cool. I've had bald eagles fly overhead. I've had sandhill cranes fly overhead. Lots of ravens. Chickadees. I've even seen the little brown bats. Not often, but I do see the little brown bats in here. So it's nice to be tucked in a forest with trees and critters and not be surrounded by people. I have nothing against people in general, as long as I don't have to be constantly surrounded by them. I don't like crowds. Unfortunately, nowadays you kind of have to be in crowds. But that's it. That's our property. That's our progress. I do have a small fabrication project I'll be doing when I get back. I guess I call it home. I still feel like this is home, but for lack of a better term, when I get back home, I have a fabrication project that I'll probably get you guys involved with. I'm going to make an adapter to go on the Bobcat that I can lock my fifth wheel hitch into or a gooseneck into, so I can grab, mostly so I can grab that travel trailer, move it around inside the shop easier, and get it tucked in tighter to the wall, or if I need to, yank it out real fast and easy when we're spraying or working on that side of the building. And that's pretty much what I do. I think of what I need, I go home and I start trying to build it. I built some choke chains for ripping stumps out that worked much better than I expected. I built a skidder out of some Schedule 80 1.5-inch black iron pipe for grabbing onto logs with a four-wheeler and just towing them out of the forest or behind the truck or whatever. But it's, you know, just a normal frame with a 2-inch ball hitch on the front. I'll show you that. Okay, there it is. I got this idea off of, I think it was Norwood's website. They had a skidder, I think it was Norwood. They had a skidder that I really like the design of. But shipping to Hawaii is absolutely miserable, as it is to Alaska. So I had some scrap Schedule 80 1.5-inch pipe. I had some casters, I had some other scrap metal, even had some box tubing laying around. So I bent it all up, drew it out, bent it up, welded it up. I actually haven't had to be able to do a real world test yet. But basically, you have this on your four-wheeler or lawn tractor or truck or if you're weird like me, on the back of your Bobcat. You back up to your log, you put the choke on. This chain actually slides through. It's a real live choke hook. Let's see if I can do this one-handed. So as you drive forward, the wheel goes up, lifts the front of the log, and you just go off driving through the forest, dragging it. That part of it is all good. The only part I have concern with is that my father had these leftover wheels from an old cement mixer. So I stole them, kind of. He let me steal them. Welded up the axles, put them in, made them work. I'm afraid those might bend and have problems. If they do, I'll chop the bases off, weld a horseshoe-shaped bracket, and change the wheel design. I'd kind of like to put some wider pneumatic, more of an all-terrain tire, like a lawn tractor tire, or if I could, even like a big four-wheeler tire on it, just to be able to get over the roots and the brush and the bumps and the trails better. But for now, this is what I managed to come up with. And what you saw me do there by hand was the first semblance of a real-world test where it just lifted the front of the log just fine. So it looks like it'll work. This medieval torture device basically is a grade 80 5/16 chain with pieces of 1/4 inch square stock, 1 inch pieces of 1/4 inch square stock welded to it at a slight angle, not necessarily intentionally. And this is for yanking trees out of piles or stump removal. This one I actually did test. I put it on the front bucket of the backhoe. So you wrap it around the trunk, put it in the choke hook, your tag end with the grab hook. You can wrap it around something and grab, or you can just grab onto the edge of a bucket or the back guard on a fork or something. Run it through a shackle, grab it, hook it onto itself. I tested this on about a 6 to 7 inch, what I thought at the time was a spruce stump. It had been dead for a few years. I figured, oh, this will be easy. I got to yanking on it, and that backhoe has something like a 3,600 pound breakout strength. I got to yanking on it, and I could move it, but I couldn't rip it out of the ground. So I did what every hillbilly or redneck would. I started yanking on it harder, yanking on it at angles, backing up, using both lift and tilt, shortening the chain to get more oomph on it down closer to the ground. And finally, it ripped the stump out of the ground. It also ripped a 10-foot diameter root ball with all the dirt, all the moss, everything else, all the brush attached to it. But it did it. And I didn't even double wrap. I just went one time around it, and those teeth dug into that trunk so hard, I was surprised that it didn't just shred it. So I was pretty pleased with that, because that answers how I'm going to rip those stumps out of the south lawn area. Just got to love it when an idea works. Almost makes you want to have more ideas. That's it for now. I don't know what else to tell you. I will try to make as much content as I can. As I grow, hopefully the videos get better. I'll get my daughter involved. That guarantees they'll get better. But I really enjoy sharing the progress of this project with you guys. It has been a long time coming. I really should have figured out how to start this 10 years ago. But better late than never, right? Once again, I'm Ryan. We're standing in the middle of Vowellhala. This is the Vowell Ventures channel. Thank you for sharing your time with me, and I'll see you on the next one.